Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. It is the aftermath, and it's the aftermath of Drake Maye's first start. Surprisingly good, or maybe not surprisingly, because I said I think that he'll play better than people think. He played even better than I thought people would think. Even better than I thought they would think. I had him down for like 9 for 20 for 160 yards. It was much, much better than that. We're going to bring in Phil Perry in a minute, and at the end of this podcast, we're going to tack on our conversation with Bill O'Brien, Patriots' former offensive coordinator, former Houston Texans head coach, current head coach at BC. We talked to him on pregame live, and he was excellent on some of the things that he would do with developing Drake Maye. But first, here's Jerod Mayo after the game talking about Drake Maye and the performance, and then a little bit from Drake Maye about how he felt his first start went.
I thought he showed a lot of poise. I thought he went out there and controlled the huddle, got those guys out of the huddle, and once again made some plays. And it's definitely encouraging. From a team-wide perspective, right now we let him down. It was his first game, and I feel like I let him down. I'm sure all the coaches feel like we let everyone down, and we just got to be better.
Amped at the start for sure. I think the biggest thing is having those guys around me. They were great. Pumping me up. Coaches, defense. The guys around me were great, trying to settle me down, and Jacoby was a big part of that. Settled me down on the sideline and pregame. So kind of once you get that first drive, it was 3 and out, and probably could have checked it down on the under, but definitely some stuff to look back and learn from. But I also feel like we did some good things.
All right, now we bring in the Senator Phil Perry, and Phil, the first question I want to ask is, should Drake Maye have been out there earlier? Did the Patriots wait too long with this player?
What I've always said is whatever you can do to get competent performance from your rookie quarterback on the field, whatever you have done in order to achieve that, that to me is the right path. Because we've seen so many quarterbacks get ruined, highly drafted quarterbacks put in bad situations, get ruined and basically never play well or never play up to the billing of their draft selection. That if you get competent play from your guy, whatever you did to get him ready, I give you credit for that because not enough teams in the NFL actually know how to do that. So it's only one game, Tom, but I would say whatever developing they did of Drake Maye between the time they drafted him and October 13th, I give him a tip of the cap. I know a lot of the stuff today was off script, but a lot of it wasn't. And so I tip my cap to the offensive staff, Alex Van Pelt, and everybody else there for getting him ready to play the way he did. To me, I have no issues with them putting him on the field when they did.
I guarantee you that we're going to hear a week's worth of people lampooning us for being enthusiastic about this performance. 20 for 33 for 243 with 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. There's a strip sack in there. There's 4 sacks in there. That's behind an offensive line with Vidarian Lowe banged up, then a guy named Zach Thomas in, a practice squad center named Ben Brown just signed, DeMontre Jacobs at right tackle, Michael Jordan out there. He gets hurt. City So comes in. If you told me that he was going to do this 20 for 33 for 243, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks against Houston with his normal offensive line, with the players the Patriots expected to be out there, I'd say that's a really good opener. Again, it's not perfect, but this Drake Maye that we saw on the field today looks nothing like the Drake Maye that I was watching in North Carolina. Nothing is an overstatement, but he's a hell of a lot more accurate. He's just as decisive. He's just as tough and resilient. Am I over the moon about Drake Maye being the 3rd overall pick? No, I think the Patriots could have done damage elsewhere. But I've been on record saying he's going to be a good to a very good player. He'll be the right fit, I believe, mentally and in terms of what he will bring you in terms of intangibles. And I'm bullish. I now consider myself bullish on Drake Maye. Late to the party? Maybe a little bit. Am I pinning the needle a little bit too much on optimism after one appearance? Maybe a little bit. But Phil, I look at that kind of performance and say they've done a really good job at first blush with developing him.
I would agree. And I look at that 2-minute drive at the end of the first half with multiple throws over the middle of the field, getting to what looked like a second or third read to really jumpstart the drive to Pop Douglas. Now, he did most of the work, 22-yard catch and run. But just to get there, right, to go through your progressions, to have enough poise back there after a rough start, right, 2 sacks, a bad pick, to be as calm in that situation as he appeared to me was impressive. And then the throws over the middle of the field, on time and in rhythm, slants into tight coverage. He drew a defensive pass interference call. Again, another tightly contested throw over the middle of the field. Those are throws that he's always been capable of making. This isn't about physical ability, but it's that playing on time aspect of his game that was relatively rare at North Carolina. And so to see it as often as we did in his first start, to me, you have to give the coaching staff and the development some credit. But you're right. We're going to hear, Tom, not only people criticizing us. I don't care about that. I know you don't care about that either. It's not about us criticizing us for being over the top on Drake Maye in his performance today. It's, boy, what idiots. Why didn't they play him sooner? Why didn't they get him out there early? Why wasn't he out there for Miami? How about 2 weeks ago against San Francisco? Maybe you win some of these games. And maybe those people are right. I just don't think you can look a gift horse. Yeah, easy for me to say. Can't look a gift horse in the mouth. Holy smokes. You can't look a gift horse in the mouth or in the mouse. There's a mouse in the house.
When you look at it, though, Phil, and you say, okay, the Patriots were overly cautious. I'd rather be too cautious with the rookie 3rd overall pick after I've seen the graveyard of broken top 5 quarterbacks that includes gravestones for Bryce Young and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold all over the place. You see very few upright and walking around happy, smiling quarterbacks who survive being a top 5 pick and getting on the field early. And this by no means indicates that Drake Maye is getting a second contract from the Patriots, or that he'll be able to deliver them to a conference championship game, which I would say that's what you're hoping for a top 3 pick. Get us to a conference championship. But to me, being too cautious with Drake Maye in a season that was going to somewhere finish between 3 wins and 7 wins, who cares? They were too cautious, perhaps. But to me, he might have developed in a way that he wouldn't have otherwise. He got to watch, when we talk about on time, he got to watch the fact that he's playing right now because of the reasons that you've been pointing out for 3 weeks with Jacoby Brissett. Bless him, appreciate him, but he didn't throw the ball when he needed to throw the ball. I don't think I had one occasion today where I said, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. Do something, don't turtle. There was very little of that. He was on time, as you said.
And I think there are throws, too, where it's impossible for us to say he would have been able to do that 3 weeks ago had they decided to play him then.
Yeah, we know.
Or 6 weeks ago had they had him start the season. There was a great throw at the end, and the game's out of hand by this point. And I wish I had my little notebook. I feel like I'm flying blind, Tom. I always have this notebook that has all the answers. Phil's notebook
was left on the field, guys.
To the test for me. I left it on the field. It was pouring rain. It was chaos out there. My guy Adam Hart grabbed it. It's safe and sound now. I just don't have it with me. So it was either a 3rd or 4th down play. It was a throw on the sideline to Kayshon Boutte towards the end of the game.
4th down play.
It was 4th down. Little shoulder shimmy. It looked like to get a defender to suck up on the flat route, and then he hits Kayshon Boutte in stride along the sideline in essentially a 2-minute situation. Does he make that throw 6 weeks ago? Does he have the poise and the wherewithal to be able to do that sort of thing? That to me is why I look at them getting him in when they got him in. It was early for them, and he still looked pretty good. I do have to give them some credit for developing him the way they've developed him, apparently.
How do you think Alex Van Pelt did today with his play calling and his management of Drake Maye?
It's a great question because as I go back through the play-by-play here online, I really didn't like the first drive.
Me neither.
Run, pass.
You want to stay out of 3rd and long. Don't run 2 dives and be in 3rd and 9. It was automatic. You're going to be in 3rd and 9. Give him a chance to get a lather going.
Now, were either of those runs, especially the 2nd down one, were those checks at the line? Was that actually Drake Maye's call to run the football? Like, I don't want to necessarily blame Alex Van Pelt for that without knowing for sure. But it felt a little conservative, especially for a guy who is amped up, who has a lot of energy and sort of has a reputation as being sort of a nervous energy kind of guy early in games at North Carolina, even at his pro days, throwing it off the side wall at the facility at North Carolina early, and then he settles in. That's just sort of who he is. So can you do anything to get him out of that? early? Can you get him some easy throws? It did look like on the second drive there was a little screen, I believe it was, to Kendrick Bourne for about 8 yards. Get him throwing it horizontal. Just get him sort of into the rhythm of the game a little bit sooner. And maybe they tried. I mean, it was on that second drive. He throws the bad pick. So, maybe Alex Van Pelt, if he pops in the Zoom with us right now, and say, guys, I've got him throwing down the field, but we're turning the ball over. We're not completing it. We got ineligibles downfield on other screen passes. We tried to get him some easy throws. We tried to push the ball down the field occasionally. That third down throw was a throw down the field. Looked like the throwaway, but the first third down throw of the game for him. So I'd have to go back through it a little bit more carefully. I think we'd have to know why the calls were what they were, especially really early in the game. It didn't feel like they were really cutting him loose the way they were in that 2-minute drill at the end of the half.
You're not by yourself either. Kayshon Boutte, who is coming on strong. He had 3 catches for, I think, 60-odd yards and the 40-yard touchdown. Here's what Kayshon Boutte had to say after the game, at the podium. And it was interesting because we're not going to maybe get this, but Kayshon Boutte saying, when I was a rookie, Kayshon, you were a rookie like 15 minutes ago. Anyway, here's Kayshon Boutte critiquing the offense.
I'll say the past couple of weeks we've been starting slow, so I feel like we're not aggressive enough as we're supposed to be, and I feel like we just need to be more aggressive, like you said. Because I feel like times where we are aggressive, the ball's actually moving and we're getting places.
Phil, when we were doing post-game live, Jeff Capitasto, our producer, got in our ear and he said, Kayshon Boutte says they need to be more aggressive, critiquing the coaching staff. I'm like, oh boy, it's not going to be good. It wasn't that offensive. It was more docile, and I went to the sideline, said Boutte, and said, can you throw me a long one here? I'm getting open. Whatever. That's fine. It was okay when, it was done earlier this season by Brissett, and he made a point of saying run the football at the end of the Cincinnati game. I don't really have a problem with it. You? Was it over the top?
I don't either. No. Listen, this is what receivers have been doing all over the NFL for a long period of time now. We just haven't noticed it here because it hasn't really hit New England because everybody was so afraid of Bill. I think that's honestly, people don't really understand, I think, a lot of times how these guys operate. And that's painting with a broad brush, but listen, they're confident. They are the way they are for good reason, a lot of them. And so for Kayshon Boutte, and it's my understanding, I was talking to a few of the other receivers today, he was telling anybody who would listen that they need to throw down the field to him because he needs the ball. And they sort of shrugged their shoulders eventually. Hey, ended up working out for him. Great job by him. But he was adamant that they needed to push the ball down the field. And he's not wrong, Tom. They are so conservative, not in terms of the number of attempts, although that's the case too sometimes, but they just, partly it's personnel, partly was Jacoby Brissett being risk averse, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. They're not good down the field. And so nobody's afraid of them down the field. You have to try to strike fear into opposing defenses, and a throw like that one will show up again next week. Now, other teams have to account for that sort of thing moving forward, and that should help them. What
they also have to account for is the fact that you're going to extend plays, and I'm sure that you saw it too. The Hunter Henry scramble check down that went for 30-odd yards was something that Jacoby Brissett did a couple times early in the season, moving around, finding Hunter Henry, but he got away from it because he took a thrashing and the blocking deteriorated. But this was an instance where you could see Drake Maye's athleticism, speed, ability to escape is a little bit better than Jacoby's now, 8 years down the road for Jacoby in the NFL. And that's a way to create separation and a way to back off defenses. D'Amico Ryans had an interesting comment. I'm trying to find it real quick here. D'Amico said, credit to Maye. One thing he does as a quarterback, his escapability is really good for them, and I think it's a positive for him. Being able to pull it down when things aren't there, being able to make plays on the run. As rushers, you have to be aware that this guy can pull it down and run, take off, and you just have to understand and be able to get off a block. So I thought they did a good job of the O-line blocking for those and him being able to find it when it wasn't there in the passing game, pulling it down. That sets him apart, makes him a little different. That in and of itself is what Phil kind of was talking about for the last few weeks, with have the ability to escape the pocket and make some plays on the run. And I think in our mind's eye, when we think of that, we think, and it's going to look like chaos. It actually looked pretty structured. So that's a way to make your players better. I mean, we always used to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their wide receivers. How come they got guys who can end up with 1,300 yards? They take in the fifth round because Ben Roethlisberger would wander around back there and have 7 guys hanging off him and throw it to guys who had uncovered after running around like Billy from the Family Circus. Shout out to everybody who remembers Billy from the Family Circus. Phil, you don't remember him, do you? Well, Phil glitched. I'm going to tell everybody here that Billy, the Family Circus was a comic strip, and it was my favorite comic strip as a kid. And Billy was the kid who he would just go, for instance, to get milk, and they would show that Billy, in his course of going to get milk, would kick a soccer ball, ride a scooter, go down a slide, and they would have a little dotted line showing all the places Billy went. And then when he came home, his mother said, "Where were you, Billy?" He goes, "I just went to get the milk." And he was gone for an hour and a half. Phil's technical difficulties continue. That was your pop culture reference. Not really popular since it's so retro. All right. Crisis averted. Phil's back. Phil, thanks for waiting on the whole conversation there about Billy from Family Circus. Let's get back to live action. What were you most impressed by from Drake Maye, or what were his teammates most impressed by when you were in the locker room?
They were most impressed by his resiliency, is how I would term it. Both mental and physical. Obviously, you take a few hard shots, although I thought he did actually a pretty good job talking about him scrambling, Tom. I thought he did a pretty good job in the open field of protecting himself, getting out of bounds. He did take one really vicious shot to his midsection, it looked like, when he stepped up in the pocket, kind of made a throw last minute and almost jumped into the hit. That was a little bit of that actually reminded me of Jaden Daniels a little bit from his time at LSU.
He got folded good. He got folded.
Yeah, and obviously the sacks where, he's really not seeing the rushers. Those are tough. But as a runner, I thought he did okay there. But it was the resiliency of playing and having some negative results to start, but continuing to come back to the huddle, continuing to fight, encouraging the other guys in the huddle, and Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry. They told me that impacted them. That gave them a little bit more of a push to continue playing and playing hard. And so that to me is a huge sign, because it was something we saw at North Carolina, and you wrote a great story about it. I think it was even before the draft, about how that impressed you. All the pounding that he took, all the pressure that he was under, never appearing to throw teammates under the bus on the field, and continuing to bounce right back and make great plays. And I thought, the way he played at the end of the first half, even at the end of the game with some of those nice throws at the end that we were just talking about, I thought he really proved himself in one game to be a resilient player. And at that position, you have to have it.
Have to have it, especially here, especially with the expectations. They're 5 years deep on a rebuild. This is rebuild 2.0. So people are impatient, and he's going to take a thrashing. He needs to be mentally resilient and focused kind of on the football and not be unsure of himself, because if he becomes unsure of himself, his teammates will start to parachute out. And again, he's played 71 snaps now or so, whatever it is. People love Mac Jones until they didn't. But it is in Drake Maye's hands to show that kind of resiliency. And I think the suit of franchise quarterback fits Drake Maye a little bit better. He was one of the best quarterbacks in college football for 2 years running. He wasn't a surprise. He knew where he was headed. He probably doesn't have imposter syndrome. I'd go as far as to say there were probably times when Mac Jones looked in the mirror and said, "Am I really about to succeed Tom Brady and be in charge of this team? I mean, I know I went to Alabama, and I know I completed 75% of my passes, and I know I'm playing pretty good here, but wow, this is weird." I just don't think that Drake Maye would ever feel like that. And he seems authentic with the way that he comports himself. Phil, why is the defense below?
I think the tackling has really fallen apart since Juwan Bentley's injury, which is odd to me. He's a great tackler himself, but it shouldn't prevent the rest of the team from remembering how to do that particular job on the football field.
Shout out Christian Gonzalez as a phenomenal tackler. Wait till you watch this back and have an opportunity. Christian Gonzalez is a ridiculously good hitter at the cornerback position, which is totally different than the scouting report we got. He was fantastic today in run support and in tackling. Did you notice that?
I did, and I saw Kyle Duggar make a few plays where it looked like he was sort of disengaging from blocks and getting in there and making an impact. But boy, 2 50-yard runs, Tom, where not only was it bad tackling, but I saw a bad angle on the first 50-yarder from Jalen Hawkins, who's free safety in the middle of the field and ends up almost getting run by, which just should never happen. So that to me is troubling in the penalties, Tom. I mean, I know the Marte Mapu call, little sketchy.
Yeah, it was a little touchy.
Little sketchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not great there maybe, but the Marcus Jones call was certainly legitimate. Both of those, lead to points for Houston. Yet another third down penalty by Dietrich Wise, or I think he basically lined up offsides. So just a number of unforced errors that are leading to all of this. I give them, I don't know. I give them a little bit of a pass, A pass is too strong. I'm going to forgive them a tad, Tom, for the 17 points that were allowed after the ridiculously early in drive turnovers that their teammates on the offensive side had. They're just being gifted ridiculous field position. They end up getting 17 points off those 3 turnovers in the second half. So, but otherwise, an uninspiring performance, I would say.
Do you think Mayo was articulating enough how he intends to fix the penalty plague? He was given an opportunity by Mike Reese in the postgame. Here's a question about the penalties and how he'll go about coaching his players to stop committing the penalties that they've been committing with great regularity.
We talk about it all the time, and Saturday night meetings, we talk about what crew's going to be out there, what do they call frequently. And we knew that this crew was going to, a high penalty calling crew. I thought the second half kind of cleaned it up a little bit, but there's way too many penalties in the game.
So Jerod kind of talks around that answer, but it's an ongoing issue. And 7 by halftime, penalties had been walked off. Debatable as some may have been, there were others that were clear. You just don't want to be a double-digit penalty team when you're also fairly impotent on offense.
Yeah, and I get what he's saying. They're not coaching these guys to commit penalties, but is there more they can do? Should they be doing more to people who are committing penalties? I don't know. Is that too simplistic to say you got to strike fear into these guys when it comes to those kinds of screw ups on the field? Like, I don't know what the solution is.
I look at the Mapu and Jones penalties. I look at those penalties that are within the context of a play sometimes as at least they're penalties of commission. You're doing something. You're in an active play. You're trying to make an athletic play. Somebody moves in a certain way and you arrive early, or you hold because somebody's getting away from you or whatever, and the play's going to be blown up, and you got away with it 2 plays ago. And it's the illegal shifts, it's the motions, it's the lining up offsides. That's the stuff that is just, you can't have those kinds of unforced penalties. And maybe I'll take a look at it this week for Quick Slants, because we do have the opportunity to do that. How many of these are pre-snap and or unforced penalties that the Patriots are committing? But they have to get away from them in the short term. Meanwhile, long term, not that long though, Patriots are going to go to London, and they will play the Jacksonville Jaguars, who got their collective heads handed to them again, just days after being given a vote of confidence by their owner, Shad Khan. Doug Peterson and general manager Trent Baalke now find themselves in charge of a 1-5 team. Trevor Lawrence continues to take on water. Could this be Mac Jones' opportunity to make up for last year's European vacation that went awry?
Would that not be, first of all, I just love the delivery there. I don't know who that was. I'm trying to put a name to that delivery, but it was great, whoever it was. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to happen, right? I didn't get a chance to see that Jaguars game. Was Trevor Lawrence so bad that he might lose his starting job?
I wasn't watching.
Are you going to seriously consider that this week?
Monkeying around doing pregame stuff here, which you'll hear. The Bill O'Brien interview is great, but his numbers didn't look horrendous. He only had 1 pick, I think, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He put up some numbers, but you can't keep losing like that, son. But he feels like dead man walking. We had some Jaguars saying the players quit out there, usually a pretty bad sign. They're going to be walking around Kensington this week just looking at this, gazing at their navels, wondering where it all went wrong.
If they lose to the Patriots, now owners of a 5-game losing streak themselves, does Doug Peterson make the trip back, or does he just continue on his own European vacation?
Sitting by the Seine, eating a long thing, a loaf of French crunchy bread and sipping wine, wondering where it went wrong. Yeah, that could happen. I mean, Woody Johnson took Robert Saleh behind the barn last week after a European loss, as Albert Breer pointed out. That tends to be a tipping point for owners. I know that here in Massachusetts, it was a bit of a tipping point for the Patriots as well. That once that game against the Colts had been witnessed in a 10-6 loss, that really crystallized and cemented the direction things were going in for Bill Belichick. But it's funny how it flips, isn't it? You put Maye in, he goes 20 for 33 for 243, and suddenly you can look out your front window and go, whoa, their house looks really messy, even worse than ours. You're not the ugliest house on the street anymore. I mean, it's amazing. All you have to do is have an upright quarterback. How was the fan reaction today?
20-point loss, Tom, and I would say that was the, and I don't want to make them sound as though it was any sort of celebratory mood in the locker room. It was not, but I would say it was the lightest post-loss locker room that I've seen in a long time, because they feel it too. There's reason to be optimistic in there right now. And so for the fan base, for the players themselves, this was a going in the right direction, 41-21 loss, but going in the right direction kind of result. The fans, to me, I thought the boos we heard at the end of the game were as big a show of support for Drake Maye as we've seen for any quarterback here in a long time. They wanted to see him throw more. He had put on a show for them. He had given them something to watch, and they wanted timeouts. They wanted an opportunity in the end zone, and there's an argument for that. I mean, give the guy a little bit extra work. Sort of the same situation it was at the end of the Jets game, though, where I don't know if it's an unwritten rule, Tom, or what, and I'd love your opinion on this. Like, does Jerod Mayo and his staff, do they look at the end of the game like that and just say, let's just run the clock out? The game's obviously over. Like, we'll run plays until the clock is run out, but we're not stopping the game to continue to run more plays, almost treat it like a scrimmage. Like, we're not competing here. Is there a, respect the game element to what they were doing by not trying to squeeze a little bit more out of Drake Maye at the end there?
I think that's stupid if there is. You play, you're a building team, you're installing and instilling a culture. You don't quit after 58 minutes. You're a team that plays right to the bell. Now, you got Greg Schiano with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and everybody got mad at him because he had guys jumping through the kneel downs a few years ago. But no, I think you play to the end, especially when you're trying to, show who we are. And if people think it's corny, whatever. Sorry, we're not worried about you. We're worried about showing what we can do to our players and how much it means to. Then on the flip side, though, if you are walking out there with DeMontre Jacobs, no offense, Michael Jordan, all due respect, and Ben Brown, God bless you, you might want to say to yourself, you know what, we got this far. Let's call it a day. We did good. We don't need somebody snapping an ankle here. So maybe I can see both sides of it. But if you are hidebound in terms of we're going to install and instill a culture and we play to the absolute buzzer every time, then you should go ahead and push on through. Phil, I can't wait for you to watch the Nick Sirianni video. There's Nick Sirianni video of him yelling at Philadelphia fans, taunting them after a win over the 1-5 Cleveland Browns. And you're going to howl because he shaved his head apparently this week. So we got head-shaven Nick Sirianni yelling at Eagles fans. And there is absolutely no way on record right now Bill Belichick will be the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles next year. 6:48, 21, 22, 23 on a Sunday, October 13th. That's when I proclaimed it. Phil, I like to watch your stock go up on who?
I'm going stock up on Drake Maye. To me, he exceeded expectations against one of the better NFL defenses in 2024. No, it wasn't perfect. Bad pick to start. Couple of sacks. But, Tom, encouraging. Mm-hmm. Stock up.
I'll give you a stock up for one Kayshon Boutte. Because to me, he is a consistent, dependable receiver who, when the ball hits his hands, it gets secured. Now, we looked at a game last year at the beginning of the year when he got a toe out of bounds, just 1 foot. I've always contended, and I'll continue to contend, that in that instance, he was being pushed from behind. His momentum carried him out of bounds. Yes, he didn't get both feet in, but it wasn't because he thought he was in college. He just wasn't able to physically do it. To me, Kayshon Boutte He was a gamble. Look, he had his issues in the offseason, but he's a good wide receiver, and bless him, I think he is a worthwhile wide receiver. With that, I go to Phil for stock down, and I'm hoping I'm leading him right down the primrose path of his first stock down, which should be, come on, don't get it wrong. Jay.
First stock down.
Jay, say it. Give me your first stock down.
Oh.
Jay. Jay.
Yeah, Jalen Polk.
All
Jalen
right.
Polk.
Yep.
Jalen Polk.
That's the guy.
Jalen Polk.
What's
catch
going
the
on
ball.
up there?
What's going on? Is it in his head at this point? This is now, I feel like multiple weeks where we've had catch issues with him.
It was 24 targets, 9 catches, I believe, was what we were told on the broadcast. So that's horrendous. It must be 4 or 5 drops now. Some guys don't have 4 or 5 drops over a 2-season period. And it didn't look like that in preseason. The one guy who's always looked good, preseason, training camp, never mind, it's always been Kayshon Boutte. He never drops anything. He's a body control wizard. I don't know if he has one game like today and he immediately starts saying, I told the coaches that's what they were supposed to do. Well, maybe that's your reason right now why he hasn't been playing a ton. But I'll tell you this, he is dependable.
He is, and I would put Pop Douglas in the dependable category too. I mean, nice game by Pop Douglas, the catch and run for the touchdown, big play to spark the second quarter 2-minute drive. So he's got to be an honorable mention for stock up at least. But Jalen Polk's got to be stock down. Putting Austin Hooper stock down, Tom.
Yes, please.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one right there. Using the ball actually to hold yourself up. I'm not sure they coach that at any level. And lo and behold, that thing was pretty loose. And by the time a defender got to him, it was out. So. Boy, it's just tough because they trust him so much, Tom. They go to 12. There can't be that many teams in the NFL that do this, but they go to 12 personnel, 2 tight ends with Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper on the field in obvious passing situations. Those guys are out there on 3rd and 8. Like usually people are putting more speed on the field in those spots, but they're putting Austin Hooper out there because they trust him so much. The trust has to be punctured a bit after that play today.
Well put, Phil. Folks, I hope you trust in us to deliver you the most timely in Patriots coverage. We'll continue to do that during this week. You have the next Pats podcast from Phil. You, of course, also have The Breakdown. Phil Perry and Ted Johnson will come at you on a Monday evening with insight into exactly what went right and what went wrong for the New England Patriots in their 41-21 loss that almost feels a little bit like a win game against the Houston Texans. I'll have quick slants for you on Tuesday. Now enjoy Bill O'Brien from our pregame show. So good we kept it around. Enjoy.
Bill O'Brien himself, former Texans head coach, former Patriots offensive coordinator, 2 times currently the head coach of the BC Eagles. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Hey, Michael. Hey, Tom. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good deal. That's great. And we look at those numbers from Deshaun Watson. I remember it being good, Bill. I don't remember averaging 39 points over 5 games.
touchdowns.
So
yeah, it was pretty good.
Is that a rarity for a young quarterback, or do you go along with the school? Some folks say, no, these guys should be developed. They shouldn't play early. How do you manage sit, play? How do you play that game?
Yeah, I think it's all about who's around him, right? I think that when you look back on that team when he was a rookie, we had DeAndre Hopkins, we had Will Fuller, we had Ryan Griffin, who was a good tight end, we had Dwayne Brown, was a really good left tackle. We had some pieces around him that could help him, and so that's one of the things that's big. It's about not just himself, the quarterback himself. It's about, who's surrounding him. And I think that was important for us. We brought him along pretty slowly, but we knew there was a time where, this guy's ready to play, and we inserted him in the lineup.
And that's the hard thing I think the Patriots are facing now is we can realistically say they don't have a roster like the 2017 Texans did that you had. They're not loaded with players on the offensive line at the wide receiver and tight end positions right now. So is it a dice roll, and should people's expectations be tempered because we have to understand how much his performance is going to be linked to the aspects around him?
No doubt. I mean, it's definitely I don't know if you would label it a dice roll, but I do think that expectations have to be lowered a little bit. I'm familiar with Drake. He's a really, really good player. I was at Alabama right after they had recruited him. They had recruited him at Alabama and thought very highly of him there. Excellent football player, really, really good athlete, very smart, very instinctive, has got a good arm, he's accurate. But again, it's a different game, Tom. You know that better than anybody. You guys have been around it a long time. It's much faster. The schemes are different. Sometimes as a rookie, you can feel like you're almost playing in a phone booth, because some of the teams that you're playing are so good on defense. So I do think, obviously you got to give him time, but I do have a belief in Drake. From my knowledge of him, I think this guy's going to be really good, but it's not going to happen, overnight, no doubt.
Before we get to the scheme and things like that, one of the continual concerns about any young quarterback when it seems like protection isn't there is the physical aspect. We don't want him to get hurt. We don't want him to break. And I kind of feel like he's a big, strong, tough kid. He should be able to protect himself at this juncture. How does a head coach feel about it? Are you guys as concerned about, oh my God, don't let him get hurt?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a concern about, don't let him get the free hitters, right? Especially from the blind side. He's a right-handed player. So from his backside, you want to do a good job of making sure you're either chipping for him or sending the protection that way, or so that things that happen to him, that happen in his face, he's there. He's watching it on the right side, but on the left side, he's got a little bit of a blind spot there. So you got to do a good job of protecting him that way. And I think, one of the things you just got to be really careful of is he's a young player who's very athletic. So when he runs, he's got to understand that, it's going to be important to slide because everybody's as fast as you, if not faster. And so the journey's going to be over. And so when you take off and run, which is going to be a good thing for him, he's got to learn to either duck out of bounds or slide and not take those free shots. That was something with Deshaun early on that we really had to work on in practice. Like, hey, man, they're converging on you, slide or duck out of bounds. Don't take the shot that you don't need to take.
Now, you bring up an important point here because Drake Maye has a skill set that Jacoby Brissett doesn't necessarily have, the running element. And so the Patriots personnel as well as anyone. Do you fit the system to Maye, or do you say, hey, Maye, this is our system, and you're going to have to be disciplined? What would you do with a young guy playing in his first game in the NFL?
No, first thing that you said, Michael, the first thing that you said is definitely let's tailor this to what Drake's good at. That's the one thing that I felt like early on with Watson, we did a good job of. We actually studied Clemson and what he did at Clemson and tried to incorporate some of those things into the offense and things that he was comfortable with. At Clemson, he used a lot of one-word calls. So we consolidated the play calls into one word and helped him, with those types of things. And the center made the mic points and things like that. So I think you got to do a good job of making sure that you're doing what Drake is comfortable doing. I think the other thing is don't have 160 plays on the call sheet. Not today. Because if you do that, now the guy's head is spinning. Let's make sure we have a pretty clean call sheet relative to numbers, maybe 80, 85 plays. That was the thing that Bill used to talk about a lot. Even with Tom, we don't need all these plays. We don't need 200 plays. We just need the plays that are going to allow us to move the ball, against the team we're playing. So, I think that's going to be a big thing today.
You've been around a lot of quarterbacks, and I know we want to talk about the young guys, but you mentioned Deshaun Watson struggling a little bit in Cleveland, and you were with Bryce Young at Alabama. He's struggling, too, in Carolina. Anything that you see from afar, not that you're trying to, wag your finger at their coaches and say, hey, this is what you should do, but anything that stands out to you as somebody who knows both players very well?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I was saying this to someone the other day, every great quarterback has had to deal with some type of adversity in their career, right? I mean, whether it's an injury or a benching or a bad string of games or whatever it is, you can go through the list of all the great players that have played that position. Every one of them has had to deal with something. And so, I don't know. Obviously I'm a coach and I'm biased that those guys are being coached well, but at the same time, I go back to what I said originally about when we put Watson into the lineup, we had a good team around him. We were a playoff team. We had a team that we felt could win. He got injured in his rookie year. He tore his ACL in a practice one day after that hot streak that you guys showed, and that was bad for us because he was doing really well. But at the end of the day, we had a lot of people surrounding him, and I think that's the key for these young guys. If you have a good O-line and, you have a couple go-to guys, whether it's a receiver, a tight end, you can run the ball. That's the thing. The Patriots have Ramondre, who's one of the best backs in the league. Let's see if we can establish the run and help the guy out. There's nothing better than a run game for a rookie quarterback.
Billy, you've been on the different sides of decision-making within an organization to have to say, okay, now's the time. Obviously, you're not here, but you've been here and understand how the machinations work with a team that's starting to develop someone. Mayo has described Alex Van Pelt as the head coach of his offense. They had a plan in place to seemingly take as long as they could developing Drake, but because of the inefficiencies of the offense, they've said, you know what, he's close enough, get him out of the oven, serve him up to everybody, we're going to see how it goes. How hard are those decisions? And you have to know it's an imperfect science. What's the role of a head coach in that? And what's the role of an offensive coordinator? Because it's his offense. It's got to be a little different for a Van Pelt or a guy who's saying, well, I don't know if we're ready yet, but okay.
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, the head coach makes the decision. It's your team. Obviously Alex can give his opinion and tell him what he thinks. But at the end of the day, Jerod's going to make the decision for the team, which he did this week. I think it's a process, right? Like, how did he do in OTAs? How did he, do in training camp and the preseason games? And how has he done? I don't know if Jerod's doing it the same way we did it at practice, but, Bill put us in a lot of competitive situations at practice. So you could really use those competitive situations in practice to determine whether a guy could play whatever position it was. So, they must feel like, hey, this guy's really progressed and he's ready to go. And, it's not going to be easy early on for Drake, but, I think like I said, he's the type of guy that'll learn pretty quickly and he'll get better and better. That's the key, just to continue to improve every single time out.
What are the signs that you would look for from the sideline with Drake Maye today to say it's moving a little too fast for him?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, one of the things you'll look at is if he drops back to pass and he just he kind of, sees the rush instead of, seeing the coverage and feeling the rush. You want to be able to see the coverage and feel the rush. If he's just looking at, here comes Will Anderson coming off the edge to my left or to my right, and I'm just going to take off. I mean, I think that's difficult. I think that's what you got to look for, and you got to try to, calm him down on the sideline to the best of your ability. He's a young guy. I think he's only 21.
Yep.
I mean, he's just over 21 years old. So, it's a fast game. It's a very fast game. It's one play at a time and try to, again, go back to calling the plays that, he's really comfortable running and then trying to really establish a running game so you can stay on schedule. Because if you're in 3rd and 10 all day against the Texans, that's a tough spot to be in.
Now, I know you've got your own business to worry about at BC. You guys have revived the program, some big wins already. Went to Florida State, knocked them out. I thought I put a little money on the Missouri game. I can tell you that.
You can't tell them that.
I put a little money. Hey, listen, you covered. Had a great opportunity to win it. I'm just saying. But look, if you look at it, you've got your thing there, and it's going very well. Jerod at 1-4 with the Patriots, and Bill is in the media. Now that you stand back and look at what you went through last year, any thoughts? How much time do you give to thinking of, wow, it was a struggle last year, and look what he's dealing with now? Did you ever think of anything like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think when you step into that chair, I mean, here at BC, we've got to learn how to not to lose before we can learn how to win. We're turning it over too much right now. We've got to really fix that starting today. We have a practice today. So, sitting in the head coaching seat is a whole lot different than sitting in the quarterback coach seat or the offensive coordinator seat or the linebacker coach seat. It's just a different thing. And you have to quickly understand that there's so many different things that go into being a head coach. It's not just the X's and O's. It's the relationships with the players. It's the equipment staff, the strength staff, the medical staff, the operations staff, the cafeteria staff, the nutrition staff. I mean, it's everything that goes into it, and it's hard if you've never done it. I remember my first job at Penn State. I mean, I went in there and it was like drinking water from a fire hose. I mean, it's very, very difficult to and you have to just kind of, budget your time properly and have a lot of good people around you. And, it's hard, and it's never an easy thing. And when you start out 1-4, hey, it is what it is. I mean, we started out a couple times in Houston, we were 1-4, and we ended up making the playoffs. So it's a long season, and there's a lot of football left to be played. What
was the main reason that you felt, okay, you know what, I'm gonna move on and find my next opportunity, as opposed to sticking here and going forward? I don't even know what the landscape was. I don't know if they asked you or didn't ask you, but I'm sure that the door would have been open.
Yeah, no, look, I talked to the people there, obviously Mr. Kraft and Jonathan, and, I thought it was best for me to move on, because I think it was best for me and my family. And I think it was and I'm not trying to think for anybody there, but I also thought it was really important for Jerod to get his own guy, to have a guy that, he could sit down with. And, he hired the guy. Bill, I was hired by Bill. And so, that's what I felt was important. And in the end, I think, it all worked out the way it's supposed to work out. I'm here at BC. We're trying to get this thing going the right way. My wife went to BC. As you guys know, I'm from here. So it's a good fit for me. And, Jerod's got AVP, and they're working together to try to get it better every day.
And you guys got Virginia Tech on Thursday, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thursday night down in Blacksburg. So that's going to be very, very, very difficult. It'll be a ramped up crowd, and, we got to have a good 3 days of practice here, and we'll leave Wednesday for Virginia Tech.
Well, we're kind of the same age. We're both from the area. We both understand how unbelievable it is in the fall, and Michael's been here long enough to know, too, how unbelievable it is in the fall when BC football is causing attention to be paid. And right. we thank you for that. It's a blast.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. And, look, that's the thing. I mean, I think what we have to do here is make sure that we continue to play a brand of football that people want to come watch play. Obviously winning is very important, but, we want to go out there and try to get better every week, and that's what we're trying to do.